Haunting sound is the title of today's tale. I earned my MD at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine with an additional 4 years residency at the Baltimore Methuselah Fellowship. Next came 5 years at the Union Memorial Psychiatry Hospital before I opened a private practice, which I've now run for the last 12 years. I have encountered everything from a blind synesthetic who can still see visuals through sound, a schizophrenic who tried to kill herself right in my office, and an obsessive-compulsive who tightened his shoelaces so relentlessly that both feet lost circulation and had to be amputated. I thought I had pretty much seen it all until this latest patient. I will protect his privacy by referring to him as Mr. X. Mr. X's symptoms were innocent enough, just a ringing in his ears which wouldn't go away. He'd visited numerous otolaryngologists, but as there was no discernible cause for the ringing, he was referred to me to decipher the psychosomatic source of the phenomenon. During our first meeting, he didn't make eye contact with me, nor did he ever speak above a whisper. He just stared at his hands, endlessly wringing them against each other. He'd been doing it so obsessively, in fact, that his fingers were rubbed raw and bloody. I made considerable progress on the first day, and with the aid of some anti-anxiety medication, he was able to look me in the eye, although the hand-wringing continued. "Can you hear it, doctor?" he asked me during the second session. "Of course not. The sound is not coming from a mutually accessible environment. The sound is a fabrication of your mind. I wish now I hadn't prescribed the anti-anxiety medication, however. That I'd kept those black, lifeless eyes pointed away from me." He pulled his gaze away from the ground and looked at my face, and it seemed as though the effort it cost him resembled how you or I might struggle to gaze at the hideous disfigurement of some elephant man. That's when I began to hear it too, that soft ringing, like church bells inside my skull. "How about now? Do you hear it now, doctor?" he asked. And that smile, that twisted grimace of satisfaction, somehow he knew I could. Regardless, admitting I heard his hallucination would only deepen his psychosis, so I naturally had to deny it. I terminated the session early and prescribed some antipsychotics, even taking some for myself. By the time I got home, the ringing was gone. In our third session, the ringing started again as soon as he entered the room. The pitch wasn't consistent like it was before though, it rose and fell with melodic rhythm like a whole orchestra was welling up inside of me. Mr. X just stared and grinned. I don't think he even cared about getting better anymore. He was just relieved at not being the only one to hear it. He wasn't very responsive that session, all he would do was hum along to the music inside my head. I terminated early again, and he went home without complaint. As he was leaving, my secretary asked me where those strange bells were coming from. I increased the dosage, prescribing some to myself and my secretary as well. The phantom sounds went away again, but the moment Mr. X was back in the room with me, the music would swell up. My racing heart pushed blood through my veins in rhythm with the beat, and my head would throb from the intensity of those notes reverberating around my brain. I'd started wringing my hands too, just as something to distract myself from the noise. By the end of the fourth session, the skin around my palms was wearing thin and there was blood beginning to seep through. I hadn't even noticed how hard I was clenching them together. As you might imagine, I referred him to another doctor. He called no doubt to complain, but I told my secretary to let it go to voicemail. I didn't care, I wasn't taking him back. And if that were the end of it, then I would have simply hung up my coat and retired that day, but the sound hasn't left me. If anything, it's growing louder, and I had even begun to hear a choir join in with the orchestra. My secretary didn't come into work today. I'm here all alone, at wit's end what to do. I've tried every cocktail of medication I can think of, but it's only left me feeling worn out and hollow. The sound is still there. I didn't want to be alone here, but somehow my office is the only place I felt safe. I tried to call my secretary to see how she was doing, but I never worked the phone system and must have pushed the wrong button. I just got the voicemail from Mr. X, but I was so desperate for an answer, I still forced myself to listen to it. Here is what he said: "As long as the music plays, you're all right. All the world is a stage, and all of life a play upon it, and as long as the music sounds, the show is still going on. I didn't come to you because I was afraid of the music. I came to you because I was afraid it would stop." I spent the rest of the day calling patients and referring them to new specialists. I called my building manager and opted not to renew the lease on my office. I went home, with no intention of ever going to work again. The music is getting quieter every day now, but that's only making me more anxious. I've tried calling Mr. X again, but his cell phone is out of service. I called the doctor I referred Mr. X to, but he never showed up for his appointment. I even went so far as to visit the address listed on his medical forms, but it was just an abandoned theater. I don't know how much longer the music will play for, or what will happen when it stops, but until then I'm just wringing my hands and waiting. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to hear more horror stories like this one, do subscribe and like the video.